Yes, guys, I'm back, and I'm back with Maple Leaf Muscle, the Canadian Destroyer. He's got a million different names. I'm talking about Petey Williams. Petey, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great, guys. How are you?
Pretty good, Petey.
Now, Petey, you're just getting in not too long. You just went over to Japan for a while to wrestle. Where'd you wrestle, and how was that?
It was all Japan. It was my second tour with them. First tour was back in April. They had like a junior tag tournament, and I don't know if you guys ever heard of him, Phil Atlas, one of Scott Gamore's students. I teamed with him. He's really good, and we did pretty good in the tournament. And this past one, it was a junior heavyweight tournament, and Super Crazy was in it. Kaz Hayashi, to name a few. It was really good. We did 2 shows at Corkin Hall. It was, about a 2-week tour, and, it was fun. It's always fun over in Japan.
How do you hype yourself up when you go out there? It's not like the States where we're, going nuts and, got signs waving and all that stuff. Is it still the sit down and then a clap, after a set of chain moves or something like that? Is it still that demeanor?
Yeah, I mean, it always has been and always will be. I mean, the best way to describe Japanese wrestling, if anybody hasn't ever seen it before, which I'm sure every wrestling fan has, is, they watch it kind of like an action movie. If you're sitting in a theater, like you're sitting there, and then when you see the big explosion, you're like, oh, that's exactly what it's like. But I mean, they also like a lot of comedy wrestling too, which is, there's guys that the last tour I was over, there was this guy, he's 50 years old. He's been wrestling for 30 years, and the reason why he keeps his career going so long is he does comedy wrestling now, which is, not as intense as the strong style wrestling they have over in Japan. So, I mean, there's a big market over there for comedy wrestling too.
Huh. Yeah, I didn't get that, from all I've got is YouTube, and then, the videos from back in the day when I used to watch Hayabusa do his thing.
Yeah.
So, did you trade magazines or tapes or anything like that? What was your start as a fan going into pro wrestling?
I mean, it was I don't know, it was 6 years old probably, right around the first few WrestleManias or whatever. And I mean, that's the only thing, growing up in Canada, there's, especially back when we were younger, over in the U.S. too, there's not too many TV stations, so all you can see was WWE. It was WWF at the time, and so you grow up being a Hulkamaniac. That's what they push down your throat, and I grew up, with that. And then, once I got older, I kind of got smarter, and I kind of like the more technical aspect of wrestling, and that's when they were, really pushing guys like Bret Hart and stuff like that. So, and then that's when, about that time when technical wrestling was kind of taking over, that's when, I started watching, other forms of wrestling like, ECW and WCW, especially the big WCW cruiserweight movement. I mean, that was a big stepping stone for, smaller guys like myself.
So what was the decision for you to cross over from the fan to okay, I'm going to take this seriously. This is what I want to make my living at. I'm going to become a professional wrestler. What was that transition like?
Well, I think, I'm pretty sure that every single wrestling fan, dreams of being a pro wrestler. I mean, some people, can make it. Some people can't. I think I was probably in high school when I was I think I want to do this for real. And, me and a couple other buddies were like, oh, let's be pro wrestlers. So my one buddy was like, all right, well, we have to start going to a gym. And, one just opened up by my house, and he's like, all right, we're going to the gym after school. And I'm like, oh, really? I really didn't want to go. And I was 17 years old. And so we went, every day after school. And then he a couple months later, he dropped out, and, he didn't really like wrestling that much anymore or whatever, but, still a passion of mine. And then I just, one of the guys that worked at the gym, he was a big wrestling fan, and we talked wrestling, and he wanted to be a wrestler, and he knew of somebody that knew Scott D'Amore, and then that's, you know, he introduced me, and then I started training there, and it was a pretty easy transition. I mean, I had a lot of, you know, great opportunities. Like, I didn't have to struggle as much as I hear some stories of wrestlers trying to, you know, build their way up in this business. I pretty much just had to stand still and let opportunity, like, hit me in the face and not move. I mean, it was pretty easy for me. I had it pretty good.
It seems you hooked up with Scott D'Amore, and you took off from there. You won the Super 8, which is, you know, I remember someone by a writer named Ross just wrote a article on BleacherReport.com about that federation and that organization and the Super 8, and brought back memories. I used to read about it in PWI, and that was a big thing. How was it for you as an indie wrestler? Did you feel that it was a big thing when you won it?
Well, what happened was before I got into TNA, pretty much nobody heard of me. Like, I did a few shows for IWA Mid-South, which was at the time when I was starting out was pretty big. I mean, guys like Samoa Joe and CM Punk and all them worked there. So when I got into there, like shortly after I got into TNA, and I mean, literally, I signed a contract in TNA. I think it was like the beginning of June 2004, and I was X Division champion in 2 months. So that was like the biggest thing for me. And then a year later, that's when I did the Super 8. So, you know, I know a lot of wrestlers, they do the Super 8 first, and then their career takes off. But it was kind of like the reverse for me. Like, when I called Jim Kettner to talk about the Super 8, he was like, we were taught, like, he already knew who I was from TNA and stuff like that. And usually that's never the case. Usually Jim Kettner goes out and he finds these guys and brings them in.
All right, Pete, this is Shane, the other co-host now. We've got somebody in the chat room, Matt C. He's a huge fan of yours, and he just wants to know if there's anybody that's refused to take the Canadian Destroyer. I know I saw you in a shoot interview saying that CM Punk was uncomfortable taking it one time. Is there anybody else that didn't want to take the move?
When I was first starting out, I mean, it was kind of hard. I mean, I remember Sanjay Dutt one time. We were working at CZW, and it was I don't know, I think it was like a best of the best tournament or something like that, and he really didn't want to do it. And but then, you know, once he did it, he's like, man, I'll do this every night. I mean, for the reaction it gets, it's so easy. You know, it's easier than, you know, landing on your back. You know, so that was one of them, just off the top of my head. I remember at first Alex Shelley. I mean, everybody was pretty much uncomfortable at first taking it. The only person that really was like gung ho about it was when I first started was Matt Seidel, or who's Evan Bourne now. He was the first one to ever take the Canadian Destroyer, and I didn't even know really how to do it. It was just like kind of like an idea in my head. And when we were working for IWA Mid-South, and when I told him about it, like, I didn't even really know how to explain it. And he's like, yeah, okay, no problem, whatever. And I'm like, okay, all right. And that's when it was born, so I don't know.
Yeah, and now, Petey, this is Demetrius. You know, the move is highly regarded as the best finisher in wrestling. You know, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that's cool. I mean, one thing, you know, that you always strive for in wrestling is you want a finishing move that is, like, recognizable, that's you know, as we call over. You know, like the Stone Cold Stunner, the People's Elbow, you know, the DDT at the time when Jake the Snake did it. You want something where as soon as you hook it or set it up, the people are already on their feet. And I remember when Team 3D first started with TNA, Bubba Ray or Brother Ray, whatever he's called now, he came up to me after watching my match.